Midnight Zephyr presents this story. Your feedback helps shape the next horror. What do you want to hear next? And subscribe so you don't miss the next night of nightmares. It was the fall of my 11th year when my family traded our suburban streets for the rustic allure of a harvest festival at Willowbrook Farm, nestled deep in the rolling hills of rural Vermont. My parents, seeking a break from the ordinary, had booked us into one of the farm's cozy guest barns converted into lodgings, complete with hayloft views over endless fields of corn and pumpkins. The place buzzed with autumn energy, tractors rumbling, laughter echoing from games, and the scent of spiced cider mingling with wood smoke. Surrounded by thick, whispering forests, it felt magical during daylight hours, but as twilight crept in, the shadows stretched long and unforgiving, turning the idyllic setting into something far more sinister. We pulled up just after lunch, and while Mom and Dad unpacked, I wandered off to explore. That's where I met Mia, a spirited 12-year-old with freckles and a vampire cape, whose family was staying in the adjacent stall-turned-cottage. She was bold and adventurous, dragging me into apple-bobbing contests and a scavenger hunt that awarded chocolate bars wrapped in ghostly foil. As the sun dipped low, the farm's main event kicked off, a twilight corn maze lit by flickering lanterns, promising thrills and chills with actors hidden among the stalks to jump out as ghouls. But midway through the twisting paths, unease settled in. I glimpsed a figure at the periphery, not one of the costume staff, but a tall man in a weathered gray trench coat and wide-brimmed hat, his face obscured by dusk. He stood unnaturally still, hands clasped behind his back, eyes seeming to track our every move. Mia brushed it off as part of the fun, but I felt a chill unrelated to the cooling air. Evening brought a bonfire gathering with storytelling, where an elderly farmhand named Mr. Harlan shared tales of a long-lost wanderer said to haunt the woods, luring children with promises of hidden treasures. Intrigued, Mia and I later slipped away to investigate an abandoned silo on the property's edge, flashlight beams cutting through the night. Footsteps echoed behind us, deliberate and heavy. The man emerged from the gloom, his voice smooth yet chilling. "Lost your way, kids? I've got something special for brave explorers like you." Panic surged as he extended a gloved hand holding a shimmering locket, bait disguised as a prize. We bolted, but in a heart-pounding twist, he pursued with unnatural speed, whispering our names as if he'd been listening all day. Bursting back to the fire, we gasped out our story. Adults searched, but he melted into the forest. Unbeknownst to us, this was no random stranger. A subplot unfolded, revealing him as a disgraced former ranger with a vendetta against the farm's owner, tied to a recent string of unsolved vanishings in the area. The night escalated when we discovered a hidden cache in the silo, photos of kids, including one resembling Mia's missing cousin. Police arrived at dawn, but the man had fled, leaving a note hinting at deeper corruption on the farm itself. In an unexpected resolution, the haunter turned out to be an undercover investigator, exposing the real predator, Mr. Harlan, whose legends masked his crimes. Yet doubts lingered. Was the chase a setup, or had we narrowly escaped something worse? Suspense built with each revelation, drawing us into a web of deception that forever altered my view of festive shadows. The crisp October wind whipped through the valleys of Vermont as our old minivan chugged up the winding dirt road toward Willowbrook Farm. I was 11 that year, the kind of age where Halloween still held that electric mix of excitement and a tiny edge of real fear, the good kind, like when you know a jump scare is coming but can't help flinching anyway. My name's Lucas, and back then, I lived for these family outings. Mom worked as a teacher in our small town near Burlington, and Dad was a mechanic who fixed tractors just like the ones we'd soon see rumbling across the fields. They figured a weekend at the Harvest Festival would be a perfect escape from the usual door-to-door candy haul in our neighborhood. "Something authentic," Mom had said with a smile, flipping through the brochure that promised pumpkin carving, corn mazes, and bonfire tales under the stars. My little sister Ava, who was only 7, bounced in her booster seat, clutching her stuffed pumpkin toy. "Are there real ghosts there, Lucas?" she asked, her eyes wide behind her plastic witch hat. I rolled my eyes but grinned. "Maybe. But if there are, I'll protect you. Dad chuckled from the driver's seat, glancing in the rear view. That's the spirit, kid. Just stick together and we'll have a blast. The farm emerged around a bend, its red barns glowing against the golden afternoon light. Fields stretched out like a patchwork quilt, dotted with orange pumpkins and tall corn stalks swaying gently. A wooden sign at the entrance read, Willowbrook Harvest Festival, where autumn comes alive, with cartoon ghosts in hay bales illustrated below. It looked inviting, the kind of place where families made memories. We checked in at the main office, a cozy log building with a crackling fireplace and shelves lined with jars of homemade jam. The owner, Mrs. Elena Whitaker, a warm woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair tied in a ponytail, handed us keys to our converted guest barn. Welcome, folks. Cottages are that way, number 4. Festival kicks off at 4 p.m. with games by the pond. Enjoy. Her smile was genuine, but there was a hint of weariness in her eyes, like she'd been running the place single-handedly for years. Dad thanked her, and we drove the short path to our spot. The cottage was actually an old horse stall, remodeled into a rustic suite, with bunk beds for Ava and me, a small kitchenette, and windows overlooking the forest that bordered the property. The air smelled of earth and hay, mixed with the faint sweetness of ripening apples from a nearby orchard. While Mom and Dad unpacked groceries, snacks, hot cocoa mix, and marshmallows for toasting, Ava tugged at my sleeve. Can we go play now? I nodded, grabbing my jacket. Sure, but stay close. We stepped out into the bustling grounds. Kids darted everywhere, some already in costumes. Superheroes, princesses, monsters. Booths lined the main field, offering ring toss for prizes, face painting, and a station where you could decorate mini pumpkins with glitter and markers. The pond shimmered under the sun with ducks quacking lazily. I felt that buzz of freedom, the kind you get when you're away from home and anything seems possible. That's when I met Mia. She was at the apple bobbing tub, her head dunked in the water, emerging triumphant with a shiny red fruit clamped in her teeth. Water dripped from her chin as she laughed, her vampire cape soggy at the edges. She was 12, with curly brown hair and a smattering of freckles across her nose, and she looked like she owned the place. Beat that, she challenged a group of younger kids. Spotting me watching, she tossed the apple my way. Your turn, newbie. I caught it, grinning. I'm Lucas. We're in Cottage 4. She wiped her face with her sleeve. Mia, Cottage 3, right next door. My folks come here every year. Dad's obsessed with the cider press. Want to team up for the scavenger hunt? Winners get a giant candy basket. I agreed instantly. Ava tagged along at first, but got distracted by a puppet show near the barn. Mia and I dashed from clue to clue, find an oddly shaped pumpkin, collect 3 colored leaves, solve a riddle about harvest moons. We chatted as we went. Mia told me she lived in a nearby town, loved reading mystery books, and once built a treehouse that collapsed mid-construction. Nearly broke my arm, she said with a shrug. But hey, adventures, right? I shared about my school's soccer team and how I wanted to be a detective when I grew up. The farm felt alive, with tractors pulling wagons of hay, laughter ringing out, and the occasional boo from hidden speakers playing spooky sounds. As the afternoon waned, the sun casting long shadows across the fields, we joined the line for the corn maze. It was the festival's highlight, a sprawling labyrinth of 8-foot stalks, lit by strings of orange lights and occasional torches. Mrs. Whitaker announced over a megaphone, "Enter if you dare. Ghosts and goblins await inside. First group out wins a prize." About 15 families piled in, including us. Mia and I led the way, twisting through narrow paths, giggling when actors in ragged clothes popped out with fake chainsaws or moaned like zombies. The air grew cooler, the stalks rustling like whispers. "This is awesome," Mia said, her flashlight beam dancing ahead. But then about a third of the way in, something shifted. We turned a corner into a dimmer section where the lights were spaced farther apart. I glanced to the side and froze. At the edge of the maze, just beyond the stalks, stood a man. He wasn't part of the act, that much was clear. No costume, just a long gray trench coat, boots caked in mud, and a wide-brimmed hat that shaded his face. His posture was rigid, hands clasped behind his back, as if he were a statue forgotten in the field. I couldn't see his eyes, but I felt them, piercing, focused on our group. A shiver ran down my spine, unrelated to the chill. "Mia, look," I whispered, nudging her. She peered over. Probably a worker taking a break. "Come on, the exit's this way." I tried to shake it off, but as we navigated deeper, I swore I heard extra rustling behind us, like someone paralleling our path just out of sight. We emerged victorious, claiming our candy basket, but the unease lingered. The man was gone when I looked back. Evening fell quickly, the sky turning a deep indigo. The bonfire roared to life in the central field, crackling flames sending sparks skyward. Families gathered around, roasting marshmallows and sharing stories. Mr. Harlan, an elderly farmhand with a bushy white beard and a limp from some old injury, sat on a log, pipe in hand. He was a fixture here, Mrs. Whitaker had said, having worked the land for decades. "Gather round, young ones," he called in a gravelly voice. "Time for a tale of the Willowbrook wanderer." We settled in, Mia beside me, Ava on Mom's lap. Mr. Harlan's story wove of a drifter from the 1800s who roamed these woods, luring lost children with shiny trinkets, buttons, coins, lockets, promising hidden fortunes. But those who followed never returned, he intoned, his eyes gleaming in the firelight. "They say his spirit still wanders, especially on nights like this." Gasps rippled through the crowd, but it was all in fun. Or so I thought. As the tale ended, I scanned the edges of the light. There he was again, the man from the maze, standing just beyond the fire's glow, near the tree line. His hat tilted slightly, and now I could make out a scar on his cheek, glinting faintly. He wasn't clapping or chatting, just watching. My heart thudded. "Mia, that's the guy," I muttered. She squinted. "Creepy. Maybe he's Harlan's helper or something." But he didn't move closer, and when a group laughed loudly, he slipped back into the shadows. The festival wound down around 8 p.m., with most families heading to their cottages. Ava was yawning, so Mom and Dad took her inside. "Don't stay out too late, Lucas," Dad warned. "Lights out by 9. Mia and I weren't ready to call it quits. "Hey, what about that silo Mr. Harlan mentioned?" she suggested, eyes sparkling with mischief. The old structure stood at the farm's far edge, a rusted tower said to be part of the wanderer's legend, where he'd supposedly hidden his treasures. "Let's check it out. Quick adventure." I hesitated, remembering the man, but the thrill won out. We grabbed flashlights from our cottages and snuck along a gravel path skirting the fields, the bonfire's embers fading behind us. The night was quiet, save for crickets and the occasional hoot of an owl. The forest loomed dark and dense, branches like skeletal fingers. The silo appeared ahead, its metal sides weathered and vine-covered, door slightly ajar. "Cool," Mia whispered, pushing it open. Inside, dust motes danced in our beams, old crates, rusted tools, and a ladder leading up. We poked around, pretending to hunt for ghosts. "Boo!" I jumped out at her, and we dissolved into laughter. But then a snap, a twig breaking outside. We froze. Footsteps approached, slow, deliberate, crunching on leaves. "Probably an animal," Mia said, but her voice wavered. The door creaked wider, and there he stood. The man. Up close, he was taller than I'd thought, with rough stubble and eyes like cold steel under the hat's brim. A faint smile curled his lips. "Evening, young explorers. Out past bedtime?" His voice was smooth, almost friendly, but it sent ice through my veins. He stepped inside, blocking the exit. "I see you're interested in treasures. I've got one right here." From his coat pocket, he pulled a small silver locket, dangling it like a hypnotist's pendulum. It caught the flashlight glow, sparkling. "Belonged to someone special. Come take a look. There's more where that came from." Mia's face paled. We should go. But he took another step. No rush. I watched you in the maze today. Brave kids like you deserve rewards. How did he know? Had he been following us all along? My mind raced. The Wanderer, the stories, the vanishings Harlan mentioned. Were they real? In a flash, I grabbed Mia's hand. Run! We darted past him, but his arm shot out, grazing her cape. She yelped as it tore, but we burst out, sprinting toward the lights. His footsteps thundered behind, heavy breaths echoing. Wait, it's just a gift. We didn't stop until we reached the bonfire remnants, where a few adults still lingered. Gasping, we spilled everything. The sightings, the chase, the locket. Mrs. Whitaker's face drained of color. That sounds like... No, it can't be. She called the others, and Dad emerged from our cottage, flashlight in hand. What happened? We repeated the tale, Mia showing her torn cape as proof. Mr. Harlan joined the group, his limp more pronounced as he hobbled over. The Wanderer? Bah, just a story to scare folks. But his eyes darted nervously to the woods. Dad and a couple of other fathers grabbed lanterns and searched the silo path. They returned empty-handed. No one there, but we found this. Dad held up the locket, dropped in the grass. Inside was a faded photo of a child, maybe 10 years old, smiling innocently. Mrs. Whitaker gasped. That's from the old missing cases. Years ago, kids disappeared around here during festivals. Police thought it was a drifter. The group murmured. Someone phoned the local sheriff, who arrived within the hour. A stern woman named Deputy Reyes. She took our statements, examined the locket. We'll patrol the area. Stay inside tonight. Back in the cottage, doors bolted, I couldn't sleep. Ava snored softly, but every creak made me jump. Mom hugged me tight. It's over now. But was it? Mia texted from next door. Her family had a phone rule loosened for the night. That was crazy. Think he's still out there? I peered through the window at the dark forest. A shadow shifted. Or did it? Morning brought more questions. Deputy Reyes returned with news. The locket matched evidence from a cold case. A boy vanished 5 years prior. Fingerprints on it led to a suspect, a former farm worker named Elias Crow, Harlan's estranged brother who'd been spotted in the area recently. Harlan confessed under pressure. Elias was always odd, obsessed with the old legends. I thought he'd left town. But the twist came at noon. Searching the silo deeper, they found a hidden compartment. Notebooks filled with sketches of children, maps of the farm, and newspaper clippings about disappearances. Elias wasn't just a wanderer. He was mimicking the legend to cover his tracks. Yet, in an unexpected turn, one note read, "They're not safe. The real monster is closer." It pointed to Mrs. Whitaker's late husband, whose death was ruled accidental but now suspicious. Elias, it turned out, had been investigating quietly, using the locket as bait to draw out confessions. But his methods terrified us. Was he a hero or a villain? Police arrested him for trespassing and stalking, but the farm's dark history unraveled further. A subplot of buried secrets, including Harlan's involvement in covering up past incidents for insurance money. We packed up early, driving away as clouds gathered. I stared back at the fields, half expecting to see Elias's hat among the stalks. For months, nightmares plagued me. Footsteps, lockets, whispers. Mia and I stayed in touch. She said the festival shut down after that. The real horror wasn't the chase, it was realizing how close evil hides disguised as folklore or family. And every autumn since, when leaves crunch underfoot, I wonder if the Wanderer was ever truly a myth. The investigation dragged on, with Deputy Reyes uncovering more. Elias's notebooks revealed he'd lost his own son years ago, blaming the farm's curse. Driven mad, he'd returned to protect kids by scaring them away, but his obsession twisted into something darker. Harlan admitted to small crimes, fencing stolen goods, but denied the vanishings. Then, a breakthrough. Digging near the pond unearthed old relics, including a child's shoe from the cold case. Fingerprints implicated not Elias, but Mrs. Whitaker herself. She'd been silencing threats to her business. The festival was a front for something sinister, luring families while she dealt in black market antiques pilfered from graves. Elias escaped custody briefly, leaving a final message. I tried to warn them. Recaptured, he claimed innocence, but evidence mounted. Our family never returned to Willowbrook. Dad sold the minivan, as if to erase the memory. Ava outgrew her fear, but I didn't. At school, I'd scan crowds for gray coats. Mia moved away, but we video called, reliving the night with a mix of thrill and terror. We were heroes, she'd say. But were we? The resolution left loose ends, some kids still missing, cases reopened. The farm became a ghost town literally, with tourists now visiting for haunted tours. Years later, as an adult, I researched it all. Articles detailed the scandal. Whitaker arrested, Harlan fined, Elias institutionalized. The unexpected outcome? Elias's warnings led to justice, but at what cost? He died in care, insisting the true wanderer roamed free. It shook me. Predators aren't always strangers. Sometimes they're the ones smiling at check-in. That Halloween taught me vigilance, the fragility of trust. And in quiet moments, I hear footsteps in the wind, wondering if the cycle continues. Boy flees stalker and haunted farm, you won't believe the twist.